Hello again. We're gonna let people come back in. Apologize for being sideways earlier. Guess I was kind of in that kind of mood. Welcome back. Welcome back. All right. So thank you for being such dedicated participants, being able to let me know when there's something up, and also thank you for joining me again. So just to recap, we are exploring the Eel River, the South Fork of the Eel River here at Humboldt Redwood State Park, and we're doing this because you are doing such a good job of staying indoors and following the guidelines for social distancing, and because of that, it means a lot of people are not visiting the parks as much, and so we're bringing the parks to you. So I was mentioning before we got cut off that I am talking to you from Northern California, right here at just south of Eureka, and we're about 2 hours south of the Oregon border. We're about 12 hours north of Los Angeles, so it's a big state. And here in this part of California, we get a lot of rain, anywhere from 50 to 100 inches of rain a year. And that rain is going to be providing water for our trees. We are home to the coast redwoods, the tallest trees on the planet. In fact, Humboldt Redwood State Park protects the world's tallest forest. It's Rockefeller Forest. It's a little bit farther north of me, maybe only about 10 miles north of me on Mattole Road. That forest has more trees taller than 350 feet tall than any place on the planet. This rain is what makes that possible, as well as our summer fog. But this rain is also what makes the Eel River possible. The Eel River is what we're going to be talking about today, and specifically how this Eel River watershed is basically holds the salmon habitat in its hands. So my background in salmon is that I worked for the Fish and Wildlife, California Fish and Wildlife, as well as an AmeriCorps Watershed Stewards Project member, and got to spend several years surveying these creeks and hiking up and down these creeks, counting salmon, identifying their habitat. And so salmon are really important to me. Salmon are such a charismatic animal that just really embodies what it means to be a hero and to be adaptive and to overcome challenges. And their lives wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for the watershed. And the watershed, one way to think of it is if you take both hands together and you form a bowl. So I am using one hand to hold this. So imagine putting both hands together. You form a little bowl. And within where your crease, where your hands come together, that is like the river. And the edges of your hands are the mountain ranges. And all the water, or maybe hand sanitizer that ends up in your hand, is always going to end up in the center, in the lowest point. And that is a perfect little model of a watershed. So this is the Eel River watershed. You could say like this side of the river is like one palm of a hand, and this side of the river is like the other palm, and it is containing the water that is here. Another way to think of it is like a bathtub and multiple bathtubs all put together. So this watershed is holding the forest, it's holding the plants and animals, and everything makes its way down to the bottom where the stream is. So if there's pollution, that's going to end up in the water, or in the stream, anywhere in the watershed. If there's wood and logs, they might make their way down here again, and during floods or erosion, sediment's going to make its way down here. And in fact, since I mentioned sediment, the Eel River is pretty impressive because it is one of the most erosion-prone rivers in North America, especially for its size. So the Eel River is every year, because of the rain, it is carrying 16 million tons of sediment in it. That's like if 2/3 of the United States semi-trucks all started carrying truckloads of sediment. That's how much that is. So this Eel River is carrying so much sediment, and the reason it is because of the geography of the river itself. I'm going to place this mount back here so I can kind of free up my hand here. So the reason the Eel River is so erosion prone is because of the geography of the river itself. So let's imagine that this is the continent. This is California. And imagine that this is sort of the ocean. And just below the ocean is the Gorda and the Juan de Fuca plate. So they're tectonic plates. This is the North American plate. This is the Gorda and Juan de Fuca. They're kind of composite plates, or whatever the geologists call it. And this plate is slowly sinking under the continent. And as it's sinking under the American plate, it's scraping up all of the top of that Pacific or that ocean plate, and it's just piling up, and it's just creating this jumble, this crazy jumble of just rocks and fossils and all kinds of dead things all just piled up, so that the mountain ranges here, the coast range where the Eel River cuts through, is just this loose jumble. It's called the Franciscan Formation. So it's really sedimentary, and you can find a lot of fossils in some of these areas. So this is a really important area because of that intense history that happens, that sort of geologic history it's all being uplifted and scraped, and it's all being eroded very quickly. And so that's one of the reasons that we get so many landslides in this area, why a lot of times if forests are cut down like they were in the last 150 years, these loose soils can really easily wash into these rivers and make them pretty chocolatey brown. And that's actually kind of a problem for salmon that live in these rivers, because salmon make their nests in the gravel of these streams. So salmon make their nest in gravelly areas. They build they dig a pot, and they then lay their eggs and kind of bury it with a mound of gravel. And if there's a whole bunch of mud and sediment here, then that's going to cover up the spawning habitat that these salmon need. And that's one of the reasons it's really important to protect the forests alongside a stream, and to protect the water and protect the sediment from eroding. So that's just a big nature of the geography of this place, or the geology of this place, I should say. And other aspects of what people's behavior on the land can affect the salmon as well, because anything you do in the watershed, anything you do to the land is going to affect the water. Whether it's things like oil or gas, or whether it is just household chemicals, things like that might find their way down here. That's going to be a challenge for the salmon that are using this waterway, which is essentially the bottom of the watershed. So I'm going to see if there's any questions real quick. Looks like not seeing any questions. Oh, hello from Boulder, Colorado. Hope you're doing all right over there. And hello from Mississippi. That's awesome that we've got some people from way out yonder. I have some family out in that neck of the woods, a little bit north of there, but great to see all of you joining us. Hope you are enjoying some of these great views. It's a pretty rainy day today here on the Eel River. As I was saying earlier, we get in this region over 50 inches of rain, sometimes even 100 inches of rain a year. So it's one of the rainiest areas of California. And because of that, you see this immense evergreen forest, this redwood forest that we have here. I should mention a little bit more about the rain itself, because this area... Oh, I see a question from Sophie. Are the salmon spawning right now? That's a great question. The salmon are not. So here in Northern California, especially in the Eel River, we get our salmon migrating up here in the late fall to early winter. So we've got Chinook salmon and coho salmon and steelhead trout that come up this river. And hello from Pennsylvania. And we are going to see them around that time period. So this time of year, all the adult salmon, the spawners, have died. They came up here, laid their eggs, and then that was the end of them. They got eaten by bears and bald eagles and other critters. And then this time of year is when the juvenile salmon have hatched and are probably just barely creeping out of their nests. Now, more likely, the juvenile salmon are not in this part of the river because this part is a little bit wider. This is the South Fork of the Eel River. So you're probably going to find them more in some of the streams, the smaller tributaries that feed into this river. A lot of people don't realize this, but if you look at a river from above, if you look at it from way above, like, if you go onto any mapping, my favorite is Google Earth, and you look at a river from thousands and thousands of miles above, a river looks like a tree. All the branches, all the little stems, or all the little creeks that make their way and slowly concentrate together to form branches, to form limbs, and then all of those limbs come together to form a trunk, and that is the heart of, or the sort of main stem of the river. So we are actually on just a branch of the Eel River. We are on one of the I think it's the second largest tributary of the Eel River, which would be the South Fork of the Eel River, and then we have the main stem of the Eel River that this flows into. And we're only about, you could kind of say, we're probably about maybe 25 miles from the base of the trunk, basically where the river gets to the ocean. And that's what makes it such a great salmon-bearing river. And, originally, before some pretty significant flood events and before a lot of settlement happened from people from the east, there was probably close to maybe over 1 million salmon migrating in this river every year. There's about 800,000 Chinook salmon, 150,000 steelhead trout, maybe up to 100,000 coho salmon, which are now an endangered species here in California. Today, it varies from anywhere from 3,000 salmon coming up to about 30,000 salmon coming up in any given year. So it's just a tiny little amount of what used to come up these rivers before a lot of settlement happened from a lot of the colonial settlement and gold rush settlement and logging settlement that happened here. And there are stories from the indigenous tribes in this area, from the Yurok and the Sinkyone people. There are a lot of stories about salmon running so densely up these rivers that you could walk across these rivers on their back. So we know that from just traditional knowledge that salmon used to come up in much higher numbers than they used to. And so that gives us an idea of what is really possible here if we do the hard work of trying to protect our forests. Now, fortunately, Humboldt Redwood State Park is a protected park. It is protected land. The trees here are protected forever. And but Humboldt Redwoods is only a 53,000 acre park. There's a lot more of the Eel River that is open and that is not necessarily completely protected. So there are lots of landowners and lots of different people that all have some kind of interest in this river. And so it really requires us to work together to try to figure out how we can still protect our interests, but as well as try to make sure that the salmon are here forever and that the salmon are actually able to thrive. Salmon are a big part of a lot of our ways of life. They're a food for a lot of people. They are central to many cultures, and they are just an inspiring animal because of the heroics that they endure to be able to begin their life in this fresh water and as little tiny pinky-sized fry migrate down these raging rivers to get out to the open ocean where they could be prey to sharks and killer whales and humans and pelicans and lots of other animals, and then after several years return up this river, battling the current, battling cascades and waterfalls to make their way back. Salmon truly are inspiring, and so that reason enough to want to make sure that we have them around. We had a couple questions. Let's see if I can scroll back here. In my opinion, which is the most interesting fish in the eel besides salmon, and why? I mean, lamprey are pretty rad. Lamprey are cool because they, first of all, they're the namesake of the Eel River. So in around 1850, the Josiah Gregg party was came out towards the Humboldt Bay, and they were exploring that area, and they came across indigenous people that had been here for thousands of years. And one of those groups was the Wiyot tribe, and the Wiyot people, they traded with the Josiah Gregg party, and one of the things they traded were lampreys, which the Gregg party thought were eels. Now, they look a little bit like eels. They're kind of a skinny, long fish, but they're very different. They are also, like salmon, anadromous, meaning they begin their lives in fresh water, they go out to the ocean, they come back to spawn. Lamprey can also latch on to the bodies of other fish and basically are sort of parasites in a way. I don't know if that's the official term, but lampreys are pretty crazy, and they're pretty cool, and they can get pretty big, and they even make little tiny redds, little tiny nests, similar to the salmon ones, but their redds are kind of small and round in the gravel. They look like a little fire pit that they've made in the gravel in the stream bed. We have some other questions I'm going to get to. Let's see, we've got, when do salmon lay their eggs? So usually in the fall and the winter. That's usually when salmon lay their eggs, and that kind of makes sense because that's when they're, here in California, it's a temperate climate, or should say a temperate climate. It is that, but what I mean is that it's a Mediterranean climate, which means that it is, we have a distinct rainy season and a distinct dry season. Our rainy season lasts from usually about November to March or to April. In this case, looks like maybe it's going to get into April. And then the spigot just shuts off. Then it's just done. And we don't really have any rain at all from May all the way to maybe October. It's one of the reasons we have that crazy fire season that happens after that. It just dries up. And so salmon are going to come up when there's a lot of water. And that's going to be in the fall and the winter when we get our rains, which is definitely one of the reasons that we're concerned about climate change, because those weather patterns, if they change, then, and as they are changing, it's making it harder for salmon. Our rainy seasons are changing. They're a little less predictable. We get less snow, less snowpack than we used to. And that snow on our mountain ridges is kind of our water supply over the summer. It's percolating into the ground. It's seeping and providing cool, consistent water. Cold water is super important for salmon. And so it's not enough just to have rainwater. For a lot of our salmon, they also need some really cold water, whether that is from little springs and small little shaded creeks that flow into the river, or if it's from snowmelt. So we get our salmon here, and mostly you'll find salmon showing up in the late fall and winter time. Let's see. Are there river otters? There are definitely river otters in this watershed, and in many others, and they're really fun to be able to watch if you do spot them. And I've seen 3 river otters all eating one dead salmon. Are salmon endangered? If so, what can we do to help them? So I answered, I think, part of that question a little bit ago, but salmon, there are many salmon species that are endangered, and it kind of depends on the state, or depends on the region. So coho salmon here in California are endangered, whereas I don't believe they're endangered in some other states. And so there are some, when salmon are endangered, that means there's some rules about whether you're allowed to catch them, or how you can affect their habitat. So endangered salmon, when an animal is endangered, it means we want to make sure that they are not going to go extinct. And so that doesn't mean just protecting the animal, it means protecting the habitat they live in, whether it's protecting the trees that grow along a stream, whether it's planting new trees, whether it's making sure to protect the water. It's a group effort to protect salmon. One of the cool things that happens in watersheds, like the Eel River watershed, is that there are so many landowners here that a lot of them will form landowner groups that are working together to kind of manage the land in a way that protects salmon. And I think that some examples I remember from when I was in AmeriCorps was the Mattole Restoration Council and the Mattole Salmon Group. located just over this ridge in the Mattole watershed. And those are a group of landowners and a lot of different people that live out there that are just trying to figure out how to protect the salmon habitat, whether it's removing invasive plants, whether it's planting new trees and shrubs and things like that. So there's a lot that you can do, and I say it's not something that you can really do individually always. It's a lot of times things that you have to work together with your community to do, because the salmon habitat is the river, and the river is basically a tether that ties thousands, sometimes millions of lives together. The river is really sustaining entire cultures. If you think of like the Nile River flowing through Africa, if you think about the Amazon River through Brazil and surrounding countries, so there's the rivers are these amazing tethers and things that tie us together. So I saw some other questions here. Do we have beavers? This is so cool. Okay, so beavers have been seen especially by a lot of settlers in American history as these nuisances that kind of that basically chew up trees and that cause just kind of trouble on people's land. But beavers are so important for salmon habitat. Now, I don't know about the Eel River itself having many beavers, but some of the surrounding rivers like the Salmon River, or if you go a little bit farther north, I believe areas like Mill Creek and places like that, beavers create dams and they create little ponds, and they don't completely dam up the stream. Obviously water gets through, but what they do is they create pools of cool, clean water. And that means that in the summer months, or even in the rainy months when it's really a raging torrent, little juvenile salmon have places to hide, places to have shelter from the swift moving water, and places to stay cool and in a cool, deep, protected area when it's in the dry summer months. So beavers actually create a huge amount of backwater habitat for salmon when they're juveniles. A lot of people think about protecting salmon. We got to help these salmon that are coming up the rivers. We got to take out the dams. We got to take out obstacles, which is all helpful for salmon. But one of the really important ways to help salmon is to help them when they're young, because it's a really critical time. Salmon are only the size of your pinky, and they're susceptible to lots of predators, and if the water gets too warm, it cannot be good for them. So shelter and shade are really important, and so beavers provide some amazing habitat, and there's a lot of research and articles about that you can look up, and I believe California Fish and Wildlife probably has some good resources on that as well. We have someone from Spain. Wow, I'm really stoked to know that people even from Spain are following us. You know, it's interesting. We all are kind of feeling pretty united globally in some of the guidelines that we're all trying to follow to be safe and healthy, which are to be sheltering in place and to be maintaining social distancing. And I've been hearing a little bit about Spain as well. And so I'm happy to know that we're even able to bring some of our redwood forests to maybe your homes where you're also sheltering. So I saw someone said I didn't do the dance. Maybe you have to go online and see if we post the home learning program that we did earlier to see the dance. Loving all the information, so happy to hear that. That's cool. It sounds like someone likes the beaver knowledge. Have you ever seen Bigfoot? I have not seen Bigfoot. Some people ask me if I believe in Bigfoot, and I would say that I'm kind of agnostic about Bigfoot, but I will say this. The reason that Bigfoot is even possible in people's imaginations here is because of how much open land there is in this region. So Humboldt Redwood State Park is this 52,000 acre park. It's about it's probably a little bit bigger than the city of San Francisco, but then it's surrounded by lots and lots of forest land. And inland there's the Six Rivers National Forest and the Klamath Trinity National Forest and the Mendocino National Forest. And you put all these national forests together and other kinds of public lands that belong to everyone in the United States. These public lands protect a huge amount of wild space and forest. And so I think that the fact that those lands can basically protect our imagination. They protect our imagination's ability to roam free. And so I would say that it's not so important for me whether Bigfoot is real or not, but the fact that there is so much public land that protects our ability to believe and imagine that a Bigfoot could exist. So that'll be my roundabout way of kind of dodging that question. Let's see if we have any more comments here. Someone's complimenting on the alder grove across the river. Yeah, there's alders here. If you go some areas of the Eel River, you'll find lots of really great cottonwoods too, which are good habitats for lots of birds. You'll find a lot of maples. You'll find the maples that we have here are big leaf maples. But of course, all of them are really important for the salmon. We call this the riparian corridor, the riparian woodland. And basically those are the trees that grow right next to the river. And they provide shelter and shade and food for lots of creatures, including salmon. Someone's saying the water looks so beautiful. It is really, really something today. It's like really, really nice and not too... We've had a lot of rain. Sometimes it could get kind of chocolatey brown during the rain, but it's looking pretty good today. The Eel River in the summertime can be really nice to swim in. It can be nice to take a canoe down, and I really hope that that you'll all get a chance to do that soon, and that people can come back and visit our parks. And right now, I really appreciate that people are really doing a really good job of being safe and making sure to practice safe social distancing, as well as I've just noticed how many people are sheltering in place just by kind of what I see around the community, and I know that it's hard for a lot of people to not be able to come out and visit as often, but I'm glad that people really feel kind of committed to trying to flatten the curve and trying to make it so that we all are able to get out here a lot sooner. Someone asking me, where am I exactly? I am standing here at the Eel River, South Fork of the Eel River near Gold Grove. And that is right next to the Burlington Campground, to the visitor center of Humboldt Redwood State Park. So it's actually pretty close to the Avenue of the Giants, which probably a lot of you are familiar with. And it's also an area that is really close to Highway 101, which is sort of the road corridor that links our coastal part of our state together. So I think that with that, I've been on for quite a while. I just want to leave you on this note that the Eel River is this tether that ties many lives together, ties thousands and thousands of people, hundreds of communities together here in this region. And of course, it is the epicenter for the life cycle of the salmon. And the Eel River is cradling all of this habitat in the palms of its hands, so to speak. So I'm really grateful that you all have joined me today here at the somewhat soggy, rainy banks of the Eel today. I hope that you stay tuned every day of the week at 3 p.m. for our live streams, and get to explore a lot of our parks, and maybe have a little respite as you're sheltering in place. So everyone, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a real pleasure being able to talk to you all and answer some of your questions. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Farewell.